Here are two females, and the one female's trying to rest, and the other one wants to assert her dominance over the resting female. And this whole idea of pecking order comes from birds. They actually will peck each other. The dominant bird will peck the submissive bird. So one way with turkeys, sometimes you can look at the heads, and if they have a lot of feathers on their head, they haven't been pecked much. So they would be considered a more dominant. Also, that one's pecking, and she's actually going to chase her. So we're going to see some. So the more dominant ones usually have full feathers. Well, not full feathers. They're always a little bald, but more feathers than the submissive one. The submissive, subordinate ones usually are missing a lot of feathers on their head because they've been pecked at so much. So pecking order comes from nature. It's just in a way of establishing a hierarchy, a level of dominance in a society. It's a very social species. Turkeys are very social. They could travel in large groups sometimes of the year, and then they start to separate in smaller groups for breeding season. But they have to have some rules in their society. So those rules are established through the use of pecking order, or a hierarchy. So once they know their place, they generally will, sometimes they'll challenge it, but most of the time they will settle into that pecking order. And it's a way of avoiding conflict. It seems like a lot of conflict using the pecking order, but in the end, it helps prevent a lot of fights. If you know where you stand, and they don't really challenge it much once they decide on this pecking order. So they know where they stand, that way they avoid future conflicts. So this male is missing some feathers in its tail plumage. Looks like it probably got bitten by another male turkey. Because male turkeys can get aggressive during breeding season when they're trying to establish the hierarchy. But right now he is interested in the female, but the females do not seem to be very interested in him. And here's another couple of males. This one's missing some feathers too. So there have been some physical altercations going on, some plucking out feathers. But if you look at their heads, they have a snood, which is that worm-like thing sticking over their beak, the top of their head, hanging down. It's called a snood. They have caruncles are this extension of the neck, called caruncles. The red things, and yeah, the dewlap, which is also under their throat. And they tend to go bright blue, bright red to attract females. So this whole process of reproduction, this whole display these turkeys put on, is really a way of advertising their health. The healthier males are going to have the best feathers, best plumage, they'll have the brightest color, heads will be bright red and blue. The males that are sick and maybe are infected, they have weak immune system, they would not be that bright. So they might not have the full plumage, they're missing a lot of feathers, they're weak, they don't develop this bright coloration, usually smaller in size. So the healthier males will be generally the brighter, the bigger ones, the more colorful ones, and the females select their mates. So it's female sexual selection. It's called sexual selection. The female picks out who she's going to mate with in the end, really. After a dominant one's decided, the female in the end is going to select who she's going to mate with, and generally losing. It's the most dominant, the most brightly colored, the healthiest male. So if you think about all this display that these turkeys are putting on just to get females, they're advertising their health, really. Because the healthier ones are going to be bigger, brightly colored. They're showing the female, I'm the healthiest, pick me. You want to pass on these good genes. They've got the best genes for survival. Because the turkey life is a struggle. When turkeys, it's not easy growing up as a turkey. So you want to have the best advantage from the beginning. You want the best genes right out of the egg. So once the egg hatches, those baby turkeys will be ready to go. So by breeding with the best, strongest male, females ensuring her offspring will also be the best adapted or the strongest to survive. So this is what it's all about. This is life. This is life, and I'm looking right out my backyard here. I'm watching these turkeys. And this is a big production that these turkeys put on. It's interesting when they look like this, they look like floats in a parade. When they're moving along, it's almost like they're kind of just floating. But this, we can look at the tail feathers, and we can see the most dominant of these two just by looking at their feathers. Because one of them has been, a few feathers have been removed. But it is amazing. These probably are brothers. I mean, just look at the coloration of that animal. Beautiful. Just amazing. Nature is unbelievable. I could just watch these all day. I don't know. I mean, I'm a nature nerd. I'm a science nerd. But even if you're not a science nerd, find your inner science nerd here for this, because this is just amazing. I mean, watching this happen in front of my backyard. Now here, the male went after, there's a female right there. The female doesn't have that bright color, but that male is trying to pursue her, and she doesn't seem, she is a little more interested than what I've seen others display. But so these females are going to check out the males, and once the dominant one's decided, once she selects and is ready to mate, they will mate, and then that dominant male will usually mate with multiple females. But she seems more concerned about maybe a possible predator flying above, but he is very he's trying to get, there's other females around too that they're trying to attract. But it's interesting, there is a vulture flying overhead, so I don't know, maybe she's distracted. The vultures really not disturb the turkey unless the turkey's dead, because vultures are scavengers. But this looks like it might actually be what is called a lek, an L-E-K. So it's like a stage for males to put on displays. Some species do this, some don't. Generally, it's for, a lot of birds do it. They will have a stage and they put on their little show, when a female will walk around and check out the males and decide which one is the best. And usually it's already predetermined of which of the males is the most dominant. But the female does have a say in who she reproduces with, and it's generally the brightest, the biggest, and the most colorful. So these leks, L-E-K-S, are displays, like a stage for all these male turkeys to put on their little show, parade around, strut around with their full plumage and their red and blue heads, and try to attract the female. And the one that's usually the brightest and the boldest and the biggest is the one that gets to mate. So these three males are showing off to that female right now. And she doesn't seem at all interested. But that's the way life is. That's life. So this, students, is an example of nature ecological relationships, intraspecific relationships. Intraspecific means in one species. And this is a big part of the life of the turkeys. This display and trying to attract a mate so they can pass on their DNA to the next generation. Until next time, find your inner nerd, your inner science nerd, or even an outer nerd. Just find your inner or outer science nerd and enjoy nature as much as you can. Even though we're in quarantine, look outside the window and try to appreciate the beauty and importance of our natural world. I will talk to you later, rock stars. I love you. I miss you. Take care, and I hope you have a good weekend.